Welcome to another episode of Quarter Notes Podcast. This week, my guest is Tommy-Lee Metcalfe from the band Dammit Goldie. They're based out of the Greater Toronto area. He is also on tour this coming summer with the Anti-Queens, who I had the opportunity to meet and open for at the Punkocalypse Festival a year or two ago. Yeah, so Tommy, he is a phenomenal drummer. He's an even cooler guy. So he studied drums and percussion at Mohawk College in Ontario. And he's just a well-read, well-educated, and killer drummer. I mean, he's been doing this for pretty much his whole life. It's in his blood. You know, we get into his background and how his father played drums or still plays drums. And yeah, it's just a really cool conversation. So again, thank you for coming and listening to the podcast. So if you're here for Tommy, welcome. And if you're new to the channel, new to the podcast, do check out the previous episodes. I've got some killer guests and I've got some more awesome guests coming up. I'm really, really excited about my next Quarter Note episode. Yeah. So anyway, with that, enjoy my conversation with Tommy-Lee Metcalfe.
Burn this world to the ground and stand over it singing. Make sure that every room, every wall, every splinter is immolated. Wander around, just you come home and restore.
Yeah. Thank you for, coming on and doing the podcast.
Of course, thank you for having me.
It's been a hot minute since I've been doing them.
Yeah.
Kind of took a bit of an extended or longer than expected hiatus from doing them. So,
Is it a clean podcast? Like,
fuck no.
I see.
No, not at all. I mean, it's not rated like R or what would have been considered a rated R film back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Now it would be like a PG-13.
PG-13, yeah.
Right. Things are a lot different now.
I get a certain amount of fucks. That's about it.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, I don't know, and I don't care about the whole YouTube algorithm, because apparently, like, if you say a cuss word within the first, I don't know if it's like 5-10 minutes or something, it gets like demonetized or whatever.
Oh, geez.
Clearly, I'm not doing this shit for money. So I just want to talk to some drummers and, have a good time.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you are Tommy-Lee Metcalfe.
I am.
Okay. Just making sure I've got the, the right guy. So you play drums for Dammit Goldie.
Yes.
And you're based out of Toronto, Ontario?
Yeah, like we all live in Hamilton, so we're just outside of Toronto, like 45 minutes, but basically Toronto based.
Yeah, the GTO or GTO, whatever they call it.
GTA.
Yeah. GTO.
Grand Theft Auto.
yeah, that's a bit better way to remember it. So you guys have had quite the year. Or I mean, yeah. I know you have. Like, you've been pretty busy and doing lots of cool shows and playing lots of stuff.
Yeah, it's been quite a year this year. Very, very busy. Definitely a bit of a bigger year than past years. So it's been pretty exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, how long has Dammit Goldie been a band? Like, when did that start?
So Dammit Goldie, funny enough, like I was in another punk band called The Advancing Lowlives for like a bunch of years. And the singer of that band, like I had just gotten out of a relationship and I lived in Niagara. I was looking to move to Hamilton because I had just graduated here at that time. And the singer of my old band put me in touch with these two guys that were looking for another roommate. Turns out they were in a band that we had played with years prior called Dammit Goldie. Now the name was spelt a bit different at that time, which was a big old band argument, and we ended up changing it. But
okay. Right.
Yeah, I ended up moving in with the guys. At that point, I had just graduated school, right? So I wasn't looking to join another rock band. I was just looking to do sub work, session work, studio work, all that kind of stuff. I was looking to get paid for the most part, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I
working drummer,
had
man. Yeah.
exactly. I had spent so many years being in punk bands. You don't really make any money or anything like that, right? And at this point, I'd gone to school and I'd made certain decisions that I'm not going to get roped into that again. I'm going to kind of chase the bag a little bit. And of course, within 4 months, they had roped me back in. So I joined a rock band again.
Yeah.
But at that time, they needed a bass player and a drummer. So I ended up grabbing a dude that I went to school with to play bass, Cam Watson, incredible bass player. He was with us for the first year, but then we've had a couple bass players since then. But no, yeah, I moved in with the guys, and Josh, our singer, he kind of just wore me down. I had turned them down probably about 10, 15 times. And then they were having auditions for drummers. So I had a kit set up. So I told them, like, you're more than welcome to have drummers use my kit, all that. And on one particular day, they had a bass player coming in for an audition, and I didn't have a drummer for it. So I told them I'd sit in. So I sat in on the rehearsal, and by this point, Josh had also shown me a couple songs on his acoustic that were unreleased songs. And between that and that rehearsal, they just kind of got me on board. And then at that point, I told them I'd get a bass player, and the rest is history.
Oh, cool. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, what's that Family Guy skit? You know, 1,000 no's and a yes is still a yes.
Exactly, right? And that's exactly what it is. Josh loves telling that story because he truly did just wear at me over the course of a handful of months.
Fucking front. He's the front man?
He's a front man,
Yeah,
but
fucking
they
front
had
man.
some really good songs, and like I heard a few of the tunes, and I was like, I could see a lot of potential in this, right? And at that point, another thing too, right, is like they were making certain moves that like previous bands I had been in didn't really get the opportunity to do. Like when we first, so our bass player didn't join immediately. When I asked him to come in, it was because they had already booked recording studio time,
Right.
and they needed a drummer and bass player for the studio. At this point, I basically knew I was going to be in the band. But it was like a very expensive recording studio called Arc Recording Studio. Great studio. It's run by Julius Buddy. He did like all the Alexis on Fire albums up till Young Cardinals. And then they also had Wade McNeil from Alexis on Fire producing the songs. So it was like a good start to be able to get a bass player on board rather quickly, just purely for the experience alone, right?
Yeah.
So then Cam came in, and after we finished that recording session, he had decided to join the band full time. But it was a great start to the band. Like immediately we had a great product. We had worked with some great people, and it was just a good experience right from the start.
Yeah. And you say, so you've had some different bass players since then, or that's still the lineup?
Yeah. So Cam, about a year in, he's like a jazz virtuoso, right? This kid, young dude, early 20s, and I mean he's just so good at the bass. But I think about a year in, he kind of, because he had always been a jazz dude, right? I think because of how busy we were, he got to a point where he kind of craved being part of that world again, right? Like I'm still friends with Cam. We all are, right? He actually lives not too far from us now. But I think he just kind of wanted to get back to those roots and start kind of playing more of the music that he loved compared to like I don't think we were his passion by any means as far as genre goes, which is fair.
Which is totally fine. And it's better to get somebody that is, because like when you're touring and stuff, like if you're not fully in it, I mean, it's long and grueling and just it'll eat you up, spit you out, and then you won't even play music.
Well, exactly,
like,
right. And you can tell when a player is kind of getting to the point where they're gonna like where they're just a bit over it, right? You can see it in their demeanor, how they approach things. And not to say Cam was like that, but we've had a few bass players now, right? So you start to pick up on some of the signs. Because our next bass player, his name's Chan, Christian Marasovic. He also great dude, great player. But he likes like the heavier stuff, right? He likes
Yeah.
the hardcore and all that shit, right? So
Yeah.
his
I
other
mean,
bands thrown to the
there's
wolves.
elements of that in what you guys play. Like
We
there's,
definitely have
like
elements.
breakdowns and stuff. And
We
yeah.
roped him in with our bits of heavy. I just don't
Yeah.
think overall it was quite where he wanted to be. And
Right.
at that point, we were just coming out of COVID. His other bands weren't really doing much. But as time progressed, he has another band called Thrown to the Wolves, great band, but they are a great deal heavier than us. And you could just tell that I think that was more of his passion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So about 8 months to a year in, because we were playing so much, right? And it is like we ask a lot of all the members for the most part as far as availability goes, or at least we did for the first handful of years while we were kind of cutting our teeth.
Yeah. You really have to. I mean,
Exactly.
that's how
And
you have to build your audience, and the only way to do that is to just be out there.
and that's the thing, right? It's like you're an unknown band, you're trying to make relationships, meet promoters, build a fan base, meet other bands. So it takes a lot of playing, right? So I think Chan didn't quite realize how active we were. And you know what? All the power to him. I respect it so much because he never let us down. Um, he always like made everything work, but you could tell how we were spreading him thin towards his other band, like Thrown to the Wolves and things like that. So we did a tour out east. And when we got back, that was when he kind of told us, he's like, maybe it's like time to start looking for another guy. Now we started looking, but it's not always easy to find like that fit, right? If you're just throwing together a band, like it's easy to find a bunch of guys that are down, but guys that have certain work ethic or the actual love of what you're doing, that they're going to put themselves there just like you are and
Mhm.
not just show up.
Yeah.
It takes a
With
while to
similar
find that guy.
backgrounds too. Like if you're in a band with like the jazz guy, like if you're not all in that same genre or come from that sort of school of thought, it can kind of get a little challenging, especially when you're trying to make like different type of band decisions on like directions of what to do next, or when even coming
Yeah.
down to like artwork and just how to put shit out, like
Yeah, right. Like
uh,
it can be tough to come to a point where everyone is happy. But with Chan, like he had told us to start looking, and I mean, we were looking for 6 months, and Chan stuck with us the whole 6 months to make sure that we weren't going without. So like,
that's a good dude, man.
love the guy to death. He never
Yeah.
bailed on us once when he could
Yeah.
have. And then, funny enough, he was actually the one that. It's funny. Our last two bass players, uh, we had Chan and our new bass player Russ. Now, when we were looking for Chan, I already knew Russ, and on Facebook, Russ had recommended Chan. So I was like, okay, cool. We got Chan. Now, fast forward, Chan's leaving the band. Well, Russ had just left his band. So then Chan recommended Russ. So they had
Yeah.
each gotten each other in our band because now Russ is
Bands
our bass player.
bands are incestuous that way. Like
Yeah. It was just funny how it worked. But that just to throw it out there, like I love every single one of our bass players so far. Everyone is on great terms. There's been no band turmoil. It's all just some people have other things going on they want to pursue more, which you
yeah.
can never hold against someone, right?
Yeah. And yeah, like that's the thing with being a musician, you know, you kind of can't take those things personally. Like,
No,
we're all
exactly right.
like we're like, especially like in a band, I know it's a collective and I don't want to say it's like a hive mind, but like, you're all in it together to do something, right? But you're still individuals and you still have to be true to yourself. And the more true and real you are with yourself in that project, the better that project is going to be.
Exactly right. You want everyone to kind of have a common goal. And
Yeah.
when you have a common goal, you're going to get a much better product.
Mhm.
Whereas like and all bands have their differences, right? One of the beautiful parts about being in a band is you've got a bunch of other guys with different influences, and then putting that together, you come up with
Yeah.
something different, right?
Yeah.
If everyone wants the exact same thing, you just sound like something
Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah. So there's always a level of compromise, and
Yeah.
that can be dicey.
Now, the one thing that I do really love about our band is that we don't really have one specific sound that defines us, right? Like, and that's to our benefit as well as works against us
Yeah.
sometimes,
There's one thing
right?
that I hate the most is like, so what do you guys sound like? It's like, well, we sound like us.
Yeah, right. And like we have a really hard time with that because like we're not a hardcore band, we're not a metalcore band, we're not a pop punk band, but we have elements of all that in our music, right? This song will be like one of our songs, "Something Is Missing," is a very pop punk tune for the most part, but then you got like a heavy breakdown, and then we have songs like Medusa, which is more of like an alt metal, right? And then we have a song like Moods, which is almost like a grunge rock tune, right? And we kind of hop around, which keeps it fresh. But the way it works against us is like, say there's a certain band coming to town, right?
Mhm.
And they're a post-hardcore band. Well, we may have two post-hardcore songs, but the rest isn't. And then
Mhm.
there's this band over here who's like post-hardcore through and through, so they're gonna get that opening slot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it can harm you in certain ways, but it's one of the things that keeps it fresh, right? And we're never really repeating ourselves.
I like going to shows where each band is something totally different. Like that's what I grew up like going to like house shows and punk rock shows where, you had one hardcore band and then you had a pop punk band and then you had like a Ramones kind of style band and everybody just rocked the fucking house down and it was a good time. Like,
Well, and that's what
those,
makes it fun too, right? You don't
yeah,
want three bands that sound the same,
no,
right?
because then it's just like one long set and you're like, oh fuck, that was okay.
Yeah, we'll tell that to the
Who
promoters booking the
who was
bigger
your yeah?
bands.
Who was your favorite band? I don't know. They all sounded the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, and yeah, exactly. Promoters and stuff. Um,
yeah.
anyway, so yeah, we've kind of delved right in. I actually have, well, I don't want to say like, I don't do any fucking research for this. Like, I mean,
But
I looked up that you were in the Advancing Low Lives.
yeah,
No, was that like your first band?
that was like my first punk band. I was in another band before that called Stereo Sunrise. It was a lighter band. I was kind of in those bands simultaneously, but that was my first like
Okay.
gigging
Yeah,
live
yeah.
band. I started working as a stage crew guy at Fallsview Casino in Niagara Falls. Um, and there was a dude there named Piero who had a band, and I guess their drummer was having some health problems or something like that. Like the guys in that band were a bit older than me at the time, because I think I was like 19, maybe 18. And yeah, their drummer was having some health issues, and they had a show coming up, so they needed someone, and he knew that I had played the drums, so he asked if I could fill in. Um, I learned the tunes, played that show with them, and then at that point they just asked me to join. So that was like my first true gigging band. But it was only probably a few months later that a high school buddy reached out and was like, "Hey, I live in this area now. Do you wanna?" I think he had some recording time because his band had broken up. Um, so he asked if I wanted to record a tune, and then we created the Advancing Lowlives out of that.
Yeah. Because you
Yeah.
guys, I mean, you got like some videos and you did some touring and stuff. Like it was fairly serious band.
Yeah, it was a great band. We had like we did Warp Tour on the last year. Toronto, not the whole
Yeah.
tour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we did some really good shows, and I love those guys to death too. I'm still really good friends with
Yeah.
all of them. Like we had some member changes in that band too, but me and the singer Pete, like we went to high school together. I was like super close with his younger brother all through high school. So that was the connection there, and
Yeah.
yeah, we stayed close all these years.
Cool. So if we rewind all the way back to when you first started playing drums or getting into music in general, like,
Okay.
do you come from like a musical background, like in your family? Like, is there a lot of musicians or anything like that? Like, what kind of gave you that spark?
So I kind of, and it's funny, like I had this conversation with um a lot of different like band members and stuff, but like everyone has their I play guitar because of Blink-182's first album, right, or whatever. And for me, it was my dad. My dad was a drummer. I grew up in a band house from like the time that I came out of the womb, essentially.
Same here,
Right.
man. Yep.
Yeah, and it was a great environment. I loved it. All of him and his bandmates would go out to smoke, and I'd be on his drum kit playing in between during their breaks, and then a handful of years later, like my stepfather, he was a stage manager, and so I just was always around music for the most part.
Yeah.
So my dad got me my first drum kit when I was about 12 or 13. To be honest, I didn't play seriously until I was a bit older. Like I knew how to play the drum kit to the best of my ability, and I'd use it for fun in high school. But it wasn't until I moved from Barrie, Ontario to Niagara when I was about 18. I didn't know anybody, so I had nothing to do. I had a new job, but lived with my parents, so I had like no bills. So I went and bought like a really sick drum kit and a bunch of recording gear. And then that became like the thing I would do. I'd finish work, or on my days off, I would just sit there and learn covers and learn how to record with the kit, with the drum mics and everything like that. And then that's when I really started to practice a lot more and decided to like kind of pursue it a bit more actively.
Man, if I could go back in time and do what you just did, like buy a fucking killer drum kit when I had no other bills or responsibilities, man.
Like I still have like a couple of those toms I still have in like cases over here in the corner from that drum kit.
Yeah. So so drumming, it's in your blood. For me, my dad was like playing cover band, like country music cover bands and stuff, and he was a guitar player, rhythm guitar. Like he wasn't a shit hot guitar player, and it was just kind of local cover stuff. But my brother, got into the drums, and then so they were always practicing and stuff at in the basement of my house. So I was always around. Like my brother didn't start playing in my dad's bands until he was like older. So like there was a revolving door of like different drummers that would leave their drum kits in the basement and stuff. And
see, that's awesome.
Try to tinker around with them, but I couldn't fuck around with it too much because we didn't want to be the guy that like broke the snare head or something like that, and then they show up for practice, and so. But then my brother started playing, and then I just, whenever he wasn't in the house, I was downstairs just bashing away on them. Just
it's we're one and the same, right? It's just you're a product of the environment, and that environment just happened to be sick ass drums.
Right. So I know you did some shows with the Anti-Queens. So you kind of hooked up with them. So how did that hook up? Like I know you Advancing Lowlives, I'm pretty sure I saw that you guys had Krusty do some of your music videos. Is that where that connection started? Or
it's a very small world when it comes to music, right? Like Krusty I've known for years. We met Krusty when because he used to play in a band called No Big Deal. At that time they were called Tomahawk Love, and the Advancing Lowlives played a couple shows with them. And then we had Krusty come take shots for us when we did that Warped Tour date. And then our next music video, we had Krusty come and shoot that. That actually wasn't how I got hooked up with the Anti-Queens, funny enough. In an also small world, Chan, our second bass player of Dammit Goldie, was in No Big Deal with Michael Krusty.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they needed a substitute or just a drummer in general because they have a lot of stuff going on right now. So I think from what I gather, I haven't talked to any of them about like what actually led them to me. But Chan reached out one day and he's like, I suggested you to the Anti-Queens, right? Now, my girlfriend is a show photographer, and she's also super tight with Krusty. So one day she reached out and was like, Krusty asked me about you, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just multiple people in my world, kind of word of mouth. And then he asked if I could play the record. And I told him, yeah, just give me a couple weeks. Cause at that point uh I was doing stuff with the Lazies when the Anti Queens first reached out. So I couldn't do anything with them. But they gave me the time that I needed. I finished that up and came back, and then I learned the record. And I think the first thing we did was we filmed a music video. I hadn't even played a show yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we just did this tour in December, and we have a big 2025 coming up.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't want to say like you're the new drummer, because they've always had,
They
similar
have
to you with
lots
the
of
bass
drummers.
players, they got lots of drummers, all of them fucking amazing.
Oh
Like, I
yeah,
mean, they had Sam Landa, and then they had Zoe, and then they had, spacing on her name.
Alejandro is
Well,
is
yeah, I had Al on the show already. He's fucking such a super cool dude.
such a nice dude. I love that guy
Yeah,
so much.
he 'cause the Anti Queens came to Fredericton and played the Punkocalypse Festival last minute to replace DOA, because Joey Shithead had a hernia surgery. So, and it was like the first year of the Punkocalypse Festival, so it was supposed to be this big thing. So last minute, and I'm good friends with Trevor, the guy that runs the fest.
Yeah.
He called up the Anti Queens, and they kind of saved the day, type of a thing. So I got to meet Krusty and the whole gang.
What's your band's name again?
Six Gun Smoke.
Yeah, we actually, funny enough, Dammit Goldie tried to get you guys on one of our
Yeah.
East Coast tours. I think
Yeah.
you guys just weren't available.
Yeah, we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So that sucks. But anyway.
Yeah, you guys came highly recommended. Like we had a few people recommend you guys when we were putting feelers out for bands.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's cool. Yeah, we do our thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we were nominated for an East Coast Music Award for Loud Recording of the Year a couple years back.
Awesome.
Botfly won, which, dude, like you get hooked up with them guys?
I don't think we played with them, but I know of them. I think we saw them somewhere.
Oh, they're fucking
But they're sick.
Yeah. They're just, yeah. I mean, as soon as like when they made the announcement that we were nominated and I saw the other nominees, I'm like, oh, fucking Botfly.
Yeah, we gotta love that, eh?
Yeah. It's like, oh well, that was fun.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of great punk bands out there.
oh fuck yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which is which?
Love yeah, we guys. Actually we tried to get them on a gig as well, but I couldn't get in touch with them. But they were also a recommended band when we were looking, because the East Coast has been really, really great to us. We almost do better out east than we do here at home.
Really?
At this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do well in like other cities other than the city that we come out of. Like we're from Miramichi, which is kind of like it's like an amalgamation of a bunch of smaller towns that kind of became a city, right? So it's very much like classic rock, like AC/DC. It's cover band central. It's like the punk rock scene is not like booming, but like you go to places like Moncton or Fredericton or St. John, or like the Panic Room in St. John. It's fucking sick. Like probably the best venue.
We tried to book there a couple times. It's just where our dates lined up. We're never on the weekends where they have their shows, right?
Jay is such a fucking killer dude, man. Like what he's doing there in St. John, keeping the punk rock and the hardcore scene going is just nuts.
Yeah, it's sick.
And then here in Miramichi, there's the Shred Shed, which only runs during the nicer months because there's no heat.
We actually tried to get in there too, but it didn't land on a day that they were open.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's another spot that's, trying to, DIY and just trying to do smaller shows. And
don't you love DIY shows?
Oh, they're the best.
Right. They're so good. There's so much better for meeting people. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, is there a lot of that kind of, like, I know in Toronto and stuff, like bigger cities, it's kind of just by the nature of what it is being bigger, everything is kind of magnified or whatever. But are there little pocket areas of like smaller DIY type stuff?
Oh, there's definitely a lot of that going on. Like there's so many like venues everywhere, but in basic like Hamilton, Toronto, Niagara Falls, like all these places, they all have their version of the DIY punk show, right? In Toronto, the ones that we were playing for a while, which I also think might have just stopped running, was called the Bunker. And it was like in an alley behind one of like the main streets, in some dude's basement, and it was sick. And then here in Hamilton, we had a place called the Kill Room, which was like a skate park that on the weekends at night would shut down for shows, right? And that was like an all ages fucking
Were
who's
people
who
allowed
of,
to
of
skate?
fucking kids, right? And people would skate while you're playing and shit. It was so sick.
Yeah.
I think there might have been a couple legal issues with that one as far as like noise violations and stuff like that after a
Being
period of time.
outdoors. Yeah.
So it ran for a couple years because it was an indoor skate park.
Oh, was it?
But I think there was some complaints from in the build. I know there was some bylaw issues. So eventually it got shut down, but it was always packed, right? And then you got places like because we also did what Trackside in Montreal, which is also kind of like a super cool DIY punk spot. Like there's a stage and everything, but there's a second level and it's all like chain link fence. So you got all these like punk kids up there with their like legs dangling off, and then you got the kids moshing down below, and it's really cool. But it's the kind of place that like if you're a singer, you stand outside until you're set because it's just filled with cigarette smoke and
Oh,
fucking.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
I
I
mean,
do. I love a good DIY spot.
kids need something to do, man.
That's the thing, right? Kids can't go to a lot of club shows, right? You get your all ages shows, but more often than not, it's 19 plus, right? So
Yeah.
the kids still want to fucking go out and drink and watch music, even though they're not allowed to do
Yeah.
any of that stuff, right?
I think it would benefit clubs and maybe, I don't know, drink sales or kind of what keeps a lot of those places open. But don't you
Yeah.
think like a dry event, like at a pub show, but just make it a dry event so they can be all ages, you know?
Like I find that venues will have more all ages events, like if it's actually more of like a music venue than a pub, because the pub does tend to rely a lot
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
alcohol sales. But like we have different music venues here, like Warehouse and St. Catharines and things like that, like the Biltmore Theatre in Oshawa and London Music Hall and all those places where they can hold the all ages shows because it's an actual like music venue, right? And you still see it from time to time in certain clubs, but it's not as easy. That's also why I love doing the festival circuit in the summer, right? Because that's where you really get like a good crowd of kids that just love it, right?
Mhm. So yeah, I heard like so Warp Tour, I think is coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know if um I don't even know if Fat Mike's in charge of it anymore, but I don't know if they're gonna keep doing the Pumpkin Drublick thing or if that's
I
over
have
now that NoFX is gone.
right, and like I don't know how I'm if I were to guess, because like even Fat Records got sold, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I really don't know what he's doing anymore, and if any of that's gonna be a thing.
Just BDSM. It's probably gonna start doing porn.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. He got his I saw today he got his stolen bike back.
Oh,
Did
sick.
you hear about that?
I did not.
NoFX's last Canadian dates ever were in Moncton at the casino, which 2 nights was fucking awesome. It was
Sick.
them and Circle Jerks and co-defendants.
Yeah,
And
that's dope.
so the first night, Mike woke up the next morning and his bike got stolen, like his pedal bike that he takes with him on tour everywhere. So he mentioned it into the crowd and stuff, and people kind of thought he was bullshit. And it's like, no, he had his bike stolen. So Seb Terrio, the guy, he does stereo designs. He did all their show posters and T-shirts and shit for the whole farewell tour.
Yeah.
He's from that area, and he found the bike.
Shit.
And then he literally flew to Vegas the last couple of days, and today he dropped it off at the Punk Rock Museum.
Sick. That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
rad. I mean, yeah, small
Funny
towns.
enough, Krusty from the Antiqueens, he actually has, I think he had 4 pictures because he's a photographer.
Yeah.
He had, I think, 4 pictures chosen to be hung in the Punk Rock Museum as well.
Yeah,
which just happened not too long ago. Super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a bucket list. I got to get down there.
Yeah, me too.
I gotta go. I gotta play in the in that room.
Yeah, the
get a
jam
tattoo.
room. Yeah, that'd be sick.
So how did you get connected, or when was the first time that you got involved with using Los Cabos drumsticks?
When I was in school, because I went back to school for music when I was like 26 or so. And I had a buddy in school who had an endorsement with Los Cabos. And I was looking for a new stick because I used ProMark all growing up. But I'm not a fan on how they're weighted, right? I don't know. It's something about them. I loved them at a certain point. I just didn't.
Yeah.
And I was looking for a new stick, and at that point, he was a Los Cabos endorser. So he gave me like a handful of sticks to try out, right? And then at that point, it was like they felt good. I liked I liked how they played. They were also really reasonably priced. And they were a Canadian company, and they had pink sticks. Now I don't know if you could tell, but I do like pink.
Yeah.
So they kind of won me over from there, right? And I was doing school at the time. And I think like, cause I was also teaching at a school, and I put in with Los Cabos to be one of their artists, like 4 times or something like that, right?
Really?
I got the dreaded no a handful of times, right? At that point, it's like I understand, right? But I kind of just let it go for a handful of years, and at this point, I was doing Dammit Goldie, and I was playing a lot more, and I'd put in another application, and I hadn't heard back yet, right? So then fast forward, it was like April last year, and I was auditioning to fill in for the Lazies, who are an Australian band, and they had like a bunch of shows with Billy Talent, right? So they were all like massive shows that were bigger than anything I'd ever done. And when I locked down that gig, it was like I remember leaving the rehearsal factory, getting in my truck. I pulled up my phone, and then I resent another email to Phil from Los Cabos. I was like, also to add to my previous application, I just got this show as well. And then 2 days later, I heard back. I don't know if it had anything to do with that, but the coincidence was hilarious.
It could have just been the reminder to look at the application too.
I think that's what it was.
He's got so many applications to go through. Like,
because then it worked out, because I got the news about that like a week before I was heading out with Dammit Goldie out that way, and then that's when I stopped at the factory. And they treated me so well. They were so nice. They took me through a whole tour of the warehouse, and they loaded me up with stuff to leave with, and it was great.
Yeah, they're the best, man.
They've been nothing but great to work with.
Yeah, I stop in there at least, I want to say 2 or 3 times a year. Stop in just to say hey.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll leave with sticks. Sometimes there'll be a bucket of like throwaways or whatever, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing with those? I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, here's whatever, like $20-$50 to come with me. Like, I pay for it. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
Just and then this whole podcast thing, and they've been nothing but supportive from day one. And like the first when we went down for the ECMAs, prime time was like May or whatever, and the announcement had just happened or whatever, so it was like a day or 2 later. Steph hit me up, and she's like, you guys are coming down for that? I was like, yeah. She's like, you got a place to stay? I was like, I don't know, like, we haven't looked into that yet. She's like, just fucking crash at my place. So we just crashed at her place. Like, yeah, we were there for a couple of nights.
Yeah, she was so cool. Like, because Phil took me through the tour, and then we got to the point of the tour where she was working away, and then she got right
Drops everything.
involved, right?
Yeah.
And she dropped everything and was like, "Oh, you should try these. Oh, you really like these. Oh, blah blah blah," right?
Yeah.
And we had a show that night. That was a broken record. So she came out to the show and she
Yeah.
said the same thing. She's like, "Do you guys have somewhere to stay?" Like, and we did, but she's like, "Next time you're down here,
Yeah.
don't worry about it. Just let me know. I'll put you guys up.
Yeah.
And it's no worries, right?" Like she was so kind.
Yeah. And Ripley, her dog, is just so cool.
Yeah.
Best
Yeah, that's
dog.
cool.
Like, well, I can't say it's the best dog because my dog's the best dog. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that same weekend at UCMA's, I misplaced, or they were moving stuff around at Broken Records, and I had like left my stuff in the green room, and they had something happened with a pipe or something. They had to move stuff, so all
Yeah.
my shit got moved around, right? So anyway, so I was looking for because we were starting the show, so I was looking for my stick bag and couldn't find it. And this was like, I don't know, like an hour before the show, and a couple drummers like, well, you can use my sticks or whatever. And I'm like, I don't want to say I'm panicking, but I'm kind of like, oh, fuck. And so anyway, I sent Ryan and Phil a message, and then Steph reached back out, and she's like, "I'm just finishing up at the gym. I'll stop in at the shop. What do you need?" So then, sure enough, like 15 minutes before the show, there she comes, coming down the street, and she's like some sort of bug hit her. So she's like, sick as like fuck. Like she was barely walking, but she
Shit.
came strutting down, and she had like 4 pairs of white hickory rock sticks. She's like,
Oh, so cool.
killed us, and then of course after the show, you find your stick bag and
Yeah,
everything's
of
right in the world
course.
again.
Of
But
course.
just that kind of last minute, like, superhero moment, like just
Well,
coming
those are the
in.
people that you want to align yourself with,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just they're super generous, super easy to work with, super easy to communicate, right? And it also does help, like the fact that it's a Canadian company, right? Because
Yeah.
being a Canadian-based artist, like I'd obviously rather like work with a Canadian, right?
Yeah. And they understand more what a Canadian artist is going through versus,
Well, and that's why, right? It's like I don't know. It's just it's going with that Canadian made.
yeah. So what's your weapon of choice right now?
Right now, I am using the 5Bs Red Intense are kind of my go-to. I think because I had that tour with the Anti Queens in December and I wasn't able to put in an order in time. And they don't generally have the packs of the Intense sticks here, which is like the longer.
Yep.
So I think I just have a standard pack of the white hickory 5Bs at the moment. I was 5As forever. But when I had to learn the Anti Queens record, there was a couple of tracks because Ali, right? He is such a wicked punk drummer, and he recorded the new album with them. Some of the parts are so fucking fast, right? like those 16ths, man. Like they're like with Dammit Goldie, I play a lot of like bigger, heavier things. Like there's some quick fills and stuff, but it's never like
you're rocking on the quarter notes. Yeah.
Right, exactly. A lot of quarter notes, a lot of eighth notes, not really very many 16th note parts, right? So like that's what I used to do in older punk bands. I've completely lost touch with that side of myself. So when I sat down to play some of these songs, I was like, Jesus, this is going to take me a couple of weeks. I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to make this work. So I ended up going with a slightly heavier stick just so I can get that momentum in the wrist movement, right? Which allowed me to kind of play a bit lighter but keep volume on those 16th notes on the hi-hat. And since then I've just kind of stuck with the 5Bs. I got used to them, and now it's what I've been rocking.
Yeah, because he was doing 5B Intense and he switched to the 2Bs. That's what he's rocking. He switched
right now. Yeah, so he just he was where I am now and went further.
Yeah. So you'll probably start playing with 2Bs.
Oh, he's such a killer drummer.
So I kind of went the opposite. I started with, first sticks I used were the 5B Red Intense, and then I went to the white hickories, and then I went to the rock sticks, and then I went back to regular 5B. And right now I'm using 55 AB reds and white. Like I've got a bag full of them. But I think my favorite stick is still just like straight up 5B.
Yeah, like I do love the 5Bs. I do like a 5A. They feel weird now that I'm so used to the 5Bs. I
55
was
ABs right in the middle, man.
it was
They're wicked.
yeah. Eh?
Yeah.
What are the rock sticks? Like what like profile are they?
They're like 16 and uh 3/4, so they're longer
Okay.
than the Intense.
Oh
Um,
shit.
and these are white dipped too.
Yeah.
Because Phil likes me. I asked him about them. He's like, I can't do it, and then I show up and there's a whole brick of them.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, he's a dude. Trying to think of the die. I used to have everything fucking memorized. They're like 6.629 or something like that. So
Yeah.
they're beefy. They're not as beefy as the 2B, but they're way
Mhm.
longer, and the taper is super short.
See, I like a long stick, right? Like I
Yeah.
grew up because I'm very all about being a showman when I'm on stage, right? Arms up. I like to be as big as possible while I'm playing. And I remember, like, I was never a Godsmack fan, but I had one of their DVDs. And Shannon Larkin's like just a badass, right?
Yeah.
And I remember he was talking about like his playing style, right? And he's like, I use long, like extra long sticks because it just looks bigger when my arms are up and things like that, right? And it always kind of stuck with me. So I've
He's
always
an
kind of been
octopus too, right? So super long arms.
oh yeah, right. It looks super cool. So I always kind of stuck with me. So I always tend to gravitate towards like a longer stick.
Yeah.
I also tend to, I don't know, because I tend to play the butts of the sticks a lot, right? Not so much like the middle area unless I'm playing
Yeah.
like super dynamic light shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And with a longer stick, I don't know. I like the momentum of like throwing the stick at my cymbals. It
Yeah.
just the length feels good, right? And
Yeah.
I don't mean that sounds terrible.
This is a drummer podcast.
Yeah,
People know
but
what you mean.
yeah, well,
The
fair enough.
shaft,
Fair enough.
using the shaft of the stick.
Yeah. Right at the base of the shaft, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no,
The
I
tips are
do
the
like a
best
long
part,
stick.
though.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But yet, no, dude, like seriously, like try, like next time you put in an order, get them to throw a couple of 2Bs in there. The rock
Yeah.
sticks are like, they're my favorite stick that I've used, but the stuff that I'm playing right now, it's too much. Like
Yeah.
it's the stuff I'm playing is a little faster. And I find just with the weight, like if they made a rock stick that was like a half inch or maybe like an inch shorter, so it'd be like like basically like, yeah, like maybe 16 1/4, like maybe a half inch shorter.
Yeah.
I think that would change like where the fulcrum is and be a lot easier.
Yeah.
But where it is now, where it's such a longer stick, I just can't. My
Too
arms just
much.
won't fucking do it. It's too much.
I tried the 2Bs because when I was looking for like to go up in size, I didn't know if I was going to go up to 5B or 2B.
Mhm.
I ended up deciding on the 5B, but I am curious to try the ABs.
Yeah, they're good.
Right? Like because that's kind of like right in the that sweet spot between the two. Right?
Yeah.
Like, there was a point when I was in school, I was using 7/8.
I
Right,
don't know
because
how
it's all the
anybody plays
jazz,
that.
right? It's all that jazz shit. So it's all
Yeah.
just like little, like it's not big and fucking giver, right?
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
very flick of the fingers, flick of the
Yeah.
wrist, right?
I get it. They serve a purpose, just not mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now when I hold a 7/8, it feels like a twig in my hand, right? And I feel like I'm gonna break it the first time I use it.
Oh, 100%. First rim shot,
So
gone.
oh yeah. I think I still have a pair of pink 7/8s somewhere, like Los Cabos 7/8s. I don't even know fucking where, but yeah.
Yeah. Now get yourself some 55 ABs and get them to dip them pink.
Dip in pink, yeah. Yeah, I do like my pink sticks.
So I got some crash questions. They're kind of quick fire. You can go as deep as you want, but you know, they're not like anything crazy. The first one is when you're playing a groove, what's your happy place? Is it on the hats, the ride, something else?
That's a good question. I feel like I lean hats, right? I like to do a lot of different like rudiments on my hats, right? A lot of open close. I don't know. I go back and forth, right? Like I will say school really enforced like a love for rides. Right? I have like 6 different rides because I can never decide on which ride I like most. There's so many different colors, so
Yeah.
many different types, right?
Yeah.
Um like yeah, I don't know. I feel like as far as my appreciation goes, I appreciate a good ride. But as far as what I tend to gravitate towards, it's a lot of hi-hat snare.
Yeah. Kick,
Yeah.
hat, and snare, man. That's all you
Kick,
need.
hat, and snare, that's all you need.
So what would be your favorite or oldest piece of gear that you absolutely cannot live without?
Okay, so I have there's actually I would say um shit, that's a good question too. Uh so I have a couple things, right? My I will say like my TRS, another Canadian company, my TRS hand hammered snare, it's been with me for about 10, 11 years, and I love it. Seppo at TRS is such an amazing drum maker. Um, I tend to use Mapex drums, uh, and they just all the I found myself in studios a lot like I want this sound, I want this sound, and it was always the same Mapex kit. So I just got that Mapex kit, right?
Right.
So like as far as drums go, like for tubs, I love my Mapex, but the snare, this TRS has just done me so good, and at this point, it's become just a regular staple in everything I do. But I also have like a symbol that I always have with me as well because it's from um, a really close friend that's no longer with us. And when like his dad gave me this symbol, so I kind of just always have it with me as just a piece of him, right?
Hmm.
And it's an old dream symbol, right? That like I don't use dream. I tend to use basically all Zildjian.
Hmm.
But that symbol is just kind of always with me as well. That's more of a sentimental thing.
Right.
TRS is more for actual use.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah. I haven't fucked with TRS.
they make some. I haven't played a full kit, right? Like I do tend to prefer my Mapex. Um,
So I haven't fucked with Mapex either. Like I've been
yeah,
Yamaha for like ever.
Yammies are nice, and
Mhm.
I do. There's to be honest, like I like a lot of drums, right? Like I also
Oh
do
yeah.
really
Everything's
love a
got
nice
like,
set of
yeah.
DWs, right?
Hmm.
Gretsch as well, and Sonar.
Comma. Yeah.
And Pearl, like nothing beats like my dad uses Pearl Masters, right? And they're a beautiful kit as well.
Yeah.
But the the Mapex drums, like I there was certain periphery albums that I was always recommending for drum sounds when we'd go into the studio, right? Kind of like similar to these sounds, similar to these sounds. When I was looking up the particular albums that I was always referencing, it was always like Matt Halpern was using the Mapex V Tours. So then I happened to look up V Tours and they came in the finish that I had been looking for forever.
Right.
Um, and I found a kit that was used at our local Long and McQuaid for an amazing price and picked them up. And they've like honestly been my favorite drums to date.
Yeah.
Like easily my
Right.
favorite to play.
Yeah. Um, I've noticed a lot of drummers now are playing barefoot.
Yeah.
Are you like a shoes guy, barefoot? Like what shoe are
I'm
you
a shoes
rocking?
guy.
Okay.
I'm a Vans guy through and through.
Yeah.
Right. Really like any shoe that has a good flex on the bottom, right? Like you don't want a stiff shoe,
No.
or I don't want a stiff shoe, right?
No.
I want something where like my shoe moves, but to be honest, like it's not really like I'm gonna die on the hill, right? If I had to play with no shoes on, I'm okay with that. There's lots of times where I walk into my drum room at home and I don't have shoes on. Like right now I'm rocking slippers with a rubber base so that they're
Yeah.
similar to shoes because I
Yeah.
do play in shoes mainly, but I'm okay playing
Yeah.
in sock feet. Growing up, I think I didn't really wear shoes often. As I started gigging a lot, it's like I don't want to take my shoes off on stage.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, to me that's the weird part is like you get there,
Yeah.
you're in a bar or whatever, and you get up on stage or wherever where the kid is, and then you just like, okay guys, just wait a second, I gotta, and you bend over and take your
All
shoes
right.
off, and then the socks are flying. You're just like, what?
Yeah.
No.
I remember when I was like younger too, right? Like my early 20s, I'd be like looking for like shoes for drummers, right? Like Converse, they're super
Yeah,
thin on the
yeah,
bottom, right? And blah 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 blah. Now it's just like, whatever the fuck I'm wearing is what I'm playing in.
probably
As long as it's not like a super stiff skate
like an
shoe or some
Etnies.
shit,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right?
no, yeah. For
Yeah,
me, it's usually Vans or Chucks. That's what I'm wearing anyway.
yeah, right.
So
And
I
like,
don't usually wear
I
anything
will be.
else.
I will say I'm sad as a drummer most of the times in the winter here in Canada because I can never wear my Doc Martens. All right, because
Yeah,
then
you
I
gotta have
gotta
shoes in your
switch
bag.
into
Yeah,
right because I can't play no fucking drums and docks. That's ridiculous. So I never get to wear them unless I'm just going to a show, which 9 times out of 10 I'm going to play. Right, so
after load in, and I'm not going anywhere. Shoe swap.
fair enough. I'm just too lazy to bring another set of shoes, or I'll forget, and
Yeah,
I really don't want to forget.
no. Okay, so if you could time travel to any event, any live show, where would you go?
What is it? The Reading Festival. I had that Nirvana live at Reading.
Totally just fucking. I was gonna say, it's like I'd probably do Reading Nirvana like
Right.
in
I had
'92.
that
Like,
DVD and I watched the shit out of that so much, right?
yeah,
And when I first got that DVD too, I was a spotlight operator for concerts, and I remember like because there's certain rules that lighting designers kind of stick with as far as like complexion goes and how colors translate, right? And certain colors that just typically don't go together because they kind of
yeah,
look dingy and things like that. And I remember the opening of that DVD, and it was just like the music starts, and you just see these two spotlights come on. One's purple and one's yellow, and they're like completely off where they're supposed to be, and they move around the stage, and then they find the guys, and it's just such like just a clusterfuck of an opening. And I remember just
yeah,
being like, "This is amazing," right?
yeah,
So that would probably be my choice,
yeah.
right?
That's where I'd be. Reading Nirvana,
Yeah.
100%.
No, it's such a good show.
Oh, it's
Yeah. There's
and the
that one,
whole
but there's
opening where he comes out on the wheelchair, and then
yeah.
like, yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's such a classic, right?
yeah,
Um
yeah. I'm a
I,
Nirvana guy through and through. Like that was they've been my band since like I first heard them.
they were a very big deal to me too. Like my dad was a or is a huge Nirvana guy, right? So they were a big part of my childhood. Um if I were to put a second, I had the Slipknot Disaster Piece DVD. That was also a big one for me. But I've seen Slipknot, so that's why I didn't choose them.
If yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That one, it's not as exciting as yeah, Nirvana live. Right?
at their peak, like
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
so good.
yeah. What's your proudest accomplishment so far?
I would say my proudest so far would be one of those shows that I did with the Lazies earlier this year. It was like we were direct support for Billy Talent. It was in the Niagara region, which is where like a lot of my family and friends are, and it was to like 25,000 people. Right.
That's
It was a very big moment for me because I had my parents backstage. I had like Dammit Goldie guys came to support, so they were down in the audience there, and it was just like a dream come true, right? Our trailer is right beside Billy Talents, and the Lazies guys are all super tight with all them because they've worked with them so much, and
yeah,
so it was definitely a moment to kind of take in, and it's funny, right? Because I've talked to a couple people about this, and in that moment, it was such a big moment for me that all I'm thinking in my head is just, you can't fuck this up, right? Don't
Yeah.
fuck up.
Takes you out of the
this
moment.
and that it takes you out of the moment. So by the time the set finished, I was like, shit. I was so paying so much attention to not fucking it up that I wasn't really soaking up like what was actually happening around me, and now it's done.
Yeah.
Right. But it was still definitely like getting off that stage, and that was one of them, because I've been doing this for so long now, right? And I went to school for it when I could have gone to school for a trade and actually made money, right? I chose to go for music and come out just as broke, right? And it was one of those moments where it's like even more broke, yeah. And it was one of those moments where like my mom came off stage and I'm tearing down my gear and shit, and she's just like the words she said to me was just meant the world to me, right? And it was basically just her saying like, you're here to do this, right? This is your thing and I'm so proud of you, blah blah blah. And
you made the right choice.
It meant the world to me to hear that from her, right? Because like they've been watching me struggle to play music for my whole adult life, right? So to have them there for that was definitely a big moment.
That's rad.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that too. Yeah.
Thank you.
So keeping with performing, what band, if they called you today, and the Anti-Queens don't count, what band would call you right now and be like, we're fucked, we need a drummer, like right now, so there's no rehearsal, it's just we need you to get on stage? Who could you do that for?
Okay, so hold on, let me ask. So wait, is it like I'm standing backstage and they're like, we need you to get on stage, or do I have the day to prepare? Even if it's not with the band?
There's no prep.
Zero prep.
The band's literally about to go on stage, and the drummer tripped and fell, broke his both arms and both legs, and they need you right now.
Damn, that's a tough question, because I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not one of those drummers that tends to just like have a whole band's catalog prepped. I'm very like, I learn by generally I write out music and then I go play it, right? So there's been a lot of shows where I don't get rehearsals with a band that's hiring me, but usually I at least have like a night to write it all out or make some cliff notes or whatever. So to go right on stage with any band, it would have to be a band that I'm just so familiar listening wise. Like, we'll say like, I'd love to say like a name like Sleep Token or some shit like that, but I don't think I'd be able to pull that off with no prep. There's just so much going on, right? Like do the White Stripes with no prep.
Hey, what she did was not as easy as it looks.
No, it wasn't. Right? But I think
people
I could
shit on her all the time, but it's like,
right? She was perfect for what that was.
Exactly.
Right? Anyone different, those songs wouldn't have been what they were.
Exactly.
But I also feel pretty confident that with no prep, I could at least make those songs sound good.
Yeah.
I feel like Billy Talent is one, just because I'm so familiar with all their stuff, right? Because I grew up listening to them, right? And a lot of the bands that I would put in that realm are just like, because Nirvana is an easy one for me to say because I know most of their songs just from growing up. Oh, Refused.
There you go.
That's my
answer. There.
Yeah, I got there. Roundabout way. All right. Yeah. Awesome. Refused is a band that I have like learned a lot of their songs over the years just from fucking around and when I was younger, right? So that would definitely be my answer.
Cool. So what's a song or a drum part that you wish that you recorded, like you have the credit for that?
Pretty much every song by Sleep Token. If you could tell, I'm really into Two from Sleep Token. His playing just blows me away. Like, I'd say if I were to be like specific, maybe like Higher by Sleep Token. There's so many, right? Like the Deadly Rhythm by Refused, right? That's another one. Was this a one song question here, or
no? There's no time limit. There's no cap. It's just,
Lateralis by Tool. That'd be a good one. In Bloom Nirvana, right? It's just so classic.
which isn't even Dave's.
No, but what is Songs for the Deaf, right? Queens of the Stone Age.
Well,
Oh, is that not Dave either? He played it though, right?
yeah, oh yeah, he played it, but that intro, like, part of it is the Black Flag.
Oh shit.
Like he rips off Black Flag right at the end of it, like that 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 that. Like,
Fair enough, but I'd still take that.
but yeah. I mean, for me, it's like anything Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, fair enough.
they were so good, and they were here in Moncton. We've actually been lucky in this area with getting some pretty killer shows in the last couple of years, and
Yeah.
Queens came to the Avenir Center in Moncton. Like they never, like when around here, if they're going to come to the Atlantic provinces, they have one stop, and it's Halifax, and that's maybe once every, like, I think the last time Queens came, they were in Halifax, and it was like in 2000, and I think it was the Lullabies tour, so it would have been 05. Like,
yeah, my girlfriend went to see them like 2 summers ago. She got me a shirt. I do love Queens. Like there was a handful of years where I just kind of fell out of love with going to concerts. Like I grew up always going to concerts, but when I started working like production, because I started at the casino when I was like 18. I was like a spot op and drum tech assistant, and then I slowly graduated up and I was a lighting tech there for like 7 years. I think I was there for 11 years in total. So I was working like 300 shows a year as well as playing shows. I was always at a concert.
Yeah.
Right. So on my day off, the last thing I wanted to do was go to a concert. But once I kind of got out of that world and was just playing, I started to really appreciate going to see my favorite bands again. In the last few years, I've gone to more shows than I did through basically all my 20s. Yeah.
Last crash question. There might be one extra one. We'll see. So if you're in the van on tour and there's a CD stuck in it, what's the one you do not want it to be?
Falling in Reverse's first album. Our singer really likes Falling in Reverse, and I mean they have a couple songs that I don't mind, but he shows me all their early stuff and it just drives me up the wall.
All right, well, I'll have to not check that out.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? No disrespect to them or anything like that. They're obviously much more successful than me, but
well,
not a
I
fan.
mean, that's, there's a lot of people that are more successful than I am or we are, and
yeah.
Right.
To be honest, there's probably a better answer to that. That was just the first thing that came to my mind, and I think the first thing that comes to my mind is most likely my most honest answer.
It's exactly right.
Right.
So this isn't a crash question. This is like pretty much podcast is over, but I do. This is something that I just thought of that I'm going to start incorporating, and that is, if there's a drummer out there that you want to give a shout out to that people should check out, give me a name.
Oh shit, there's a whole bunch. Like LA, right? Hands down. Drum of the Creep Show, Make War was on the last Andy Queen's album. Amazing. AJ Dina, he was Conversations' last drummer. They're a Toronto-based band, great guys as well. Dan Mills, he's actually in a band called Truce, right? Yep. He's also a Los Cabos dude. Yeah.
He used my kit.
He's fucking killer player as well.
He was the first person to play this cymbal right here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like Dan, because my schedule has gotten a bit thicker this past year, and like I know I'm going with the Anti-Queens for 5 weeks in Europe this summer, so I'm assuming there's going to be some conflicting dates with Dammit Goldie. And I actually believe that Dan is probably, like, it's not for certain or anything, but I think he's going to probably be my fill-in for any of those Dammit Goldie dates that I can't make. because I trust him 100%. He's just such a great player,
Solid
super
dude.
clean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, he's super clean. Yeah. Yeah. We played there was a festival here in Miramichi, and they brought Truce in because a lot of the guys are from Moncton.
Yeah.
And so he came down and we had a great chat before and after the show. And say we opened the set and then they played after us. But he used my kit. He used my cymbals and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Such a good player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. Like I was standing side stage and I'm just like, I gotta go practice.
Yeah, he's just so solid, right? He does all like I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, his fills are so fucking clean, man.
They
Like
are. Yeah.
I love that, right? You get that articulation in there. It makes the world a difference.
Like the rush or the drag, like I find I rush a lot or I drag a lot. So, but like he's just like right there.
Rock solid.
Yeah. Cool. Well, awesome. Well, thanks. That's perfect.
Yeah. Of course, man. Thanks
Again,
for having me.
Yeah, appreciate taking the time, and I'll get this up eventually. And next time you guys are coming around, we'll see if we can get those schedules lined up. And
yeah, that'd be sweet.
Show. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, do a show together.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man.
Of course, man. Anytime.
All right, that was my chat with Tommy. Thank you so much again, Tommy, for being on the episode, being on the podcast. It was really cool to meet you and hang out. All the best with everything that's coming your way. You know, some people call it luck. I think it's just being prepared and saying yes when opportunities come at you, and having that open door. So yeah, all the success that you've been having with, playing and getting to, open for Billy Talent, and now you're going to tour over in Europe. It's just work pays off. So thanks again, and I'm going to have all of Tommy's social links, and same with Dammit Goldie and the Anti-Queens, since he'll be on the road with them coming up. So with that, that's this week's episode. My next one, as far as quarter notes goes, I've already recorded. Super excited for that one. I don't think people are going to expect my guest, and I'm really looking forward to it because it was an amazing conversation. I'll just say this: he's a legend in the punk rock drumming world, and it was really cool to get hooked up and have our chat. So with that, I'm going to leave this episode here. So until the next one, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Bye for now.